Once again, Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world, more particularly to all Shepherd's Rod believers, and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Special greetings to our brethren in Colorado, in PG Island, in Mexico, Spain, in Africa, to the United Kingdom, and also to our brethren in Australia, and to all the living saints scattered abroad. Greetings, and may the good Lord bless you, my dear brothers and sisters. This is our episode number 7 on the subject, the day of slaughter. Now let us begin reading tract number 3 on page 49 and page 50. It says here, though the cleansing of the sanctuary as has already been, since from Daniel's prophecies, was to take place after 1844 AD. I would like to repeat again. It says, though the cleansing of the sanctuary, as has already been seen from Daniel's prophecies, was to take place after 1844 AD, yet since the living righteous are still commingled with the sinners in the church, and since Daniel saw the Ancient of Days sit in judgment, not to slay those who had the mark, but to judge from the books which were opened. Obviously, his vision of the judgment is in respect to the dead. Tract number 3, page 49 and page 50. Let us carefully decipher this statement, and with much caution that we could be able to grasp the true meaning that had been portrayed in this paragraph. First of all, the statement, yet since the living righteous are still commingled with the sinners in the church. First, this statement must be applied to the time when the living righteous were already in existence. Undoubtedly, the living righteous must be directly pointing to the saints that will no longer to taste death. And of course, it must be applied to the 144,000 living saints, the first fruits among the living. And let us ascertain clearly in what period of time by which the entire constituent of the 144,000 living saints, all of them were already in existence. Or in other words, all of them were already physically born. Now, I would like to connect 1SR, then we will go back to that statement. Here in 1SR 227, it says, New Testament, section number 2. It says, Jacob, being the son of Isaac, naturally come next in line. Jacob then is the symbol of the second section after Christ, as shown on the chart, beginning in 1844. The aim of the church since that time has been to make the 144,000. As Jacob was the father of the 12 tribes of Israel, the type, just so he is the father in type of the antitype, the 144,000, the true. The section represented by Jacob is the only fitting symbolical period to give birth to the 144,000. As soon as this number is made and sealed, this particular section is to pass away and usher in the next. Now, here in 1 Ezra 227, the statement saying that it is in section number 2, entitled Jacob, the symbolical period to give birth to the 144,000. Although it did not say what birth. Is it physically born or is it spiritually born? If it is pertaining to the second birth, spiritually born, logically, they must be first born physically. So, in this reading completely answer our question. When would be the 144,000? All of them will be in existence, born physically. The absolute answer must be in the period entitled Jacob. Because according to the reading, as soon as this number is made, meaning as soon as all of them were already in existence physically and then sealed, meaning spiritually born, then this particular section is to pass away and usher in the next section, which is the third section entitled Israel. Now let us look at first that section that passed from Jacob to Israel. Now it says here in 1 SR 227, as there was an important event, 1 SR 227, as there was an important event with each succeeding section at the close of the one and beginning of the other, there must be something of no lesser consequence that would make the change of this section with which we have identified ourselves. So, P.T. Hotep made it so plain, testifying that they were still living in the period, section number 2, entitled Jacob. And here, the prophet is predicting that event that would make the change from section number 2 to section number 3, or when that section will pass away and usher in the next, by which there must be something very important event by which the consequence could not less than the consequence when the section number 1 pass away and section number 2 comes in. Now let us look at first what happened from section number 1 to section number 2. The word consequence must be referring only to the neglectful, and by which of such negligence there is a consequence by which they could not alter. Now, viewing first such historical event, I would like to read early writings. Early writings, page 260 and 261. Let us read. Early writings, 260. Those who rejected the first message could not be benefited by the second, neither were they benefited by the midnight cry, which was to prepare them to enter with Jesus by faith into the most holy place of the heavenly sanctuary. And by rejecting the two former messages, they have so darkened their understanding that they can see no light in the third angel's message, which shows the way into the most holy place. So the statement, the consequence, is pointing to the people who rejected the proclamation of the first angel's message. And accordingly, by rejecting the first angel's message, they could not be benefited by the second angel's message. And neither they will be benefited by the midnight cry, by which such message of the midnight cry is to prepare them to enter with Jesus by faith into the most holy place of the heavenly sanctuary. And if you will look at in reality the occurrence in the days of William Miller, this statement can only be applied unto them indirectly, because the sequence here, first the proclamation of the first angel's message, then the second angel's message, then the midnight cry, and then the loud voice of the proclamation of the third angel's message. But in the days of William Miller, it is disarranged. And that's why B.T. Hotep says, contrary to the proper application of the parable. Let us read the statement. It says here, while the bridegroom tarried, 2 SR 181 and 182. While the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. And at midnight there was a cry made, Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. Note that they slumbered and slept before the cry was made. In the summer of 1844, midway between the time when it was first thought that the 2,300 days would end on March 21 and the second date, October 22 of the same year, this period they applied as being the tarrying time. But mark that the cry has been going on for some years, the message by Miller, and the tarrying time was applied at its close after they had discovered their miscalculations, which is contrary to a proper application of the parable. So, the proper application, the perfect arrangement must be, brothers and sisters, the tarrying time first, That is the proper application of the parable. The period of tarrying time must occur first, and then the arrangement is stated here. In early writings 260, then the proclamation of the first angel's message to fear God and to give glory to Him, and then the proclamation of the second angel's message, then the midnight cry, and then the loud voice of the third angel's message. Although at this time, we will not focus our attention to the whole settings, but just to quote that statement, that the statement, there must be something of no lesser consequence that would make the change of this section. Or in other words, it is a solemn warning message to all the people living at that time when the second section is about to pass away and usher in the next. There must be a message by which such message, brothers and sisters, those who will reject such messages, the consequence, brothers and sisters. According to one symbolic code, number 6, page 9. One symbolic code, number 6, page 9. It says, therefore, after the first and second angels' messages were presented to the people at that time, their probation closed, and their destinies were unalterably fixed, either for eternal life or eternal death, as was the case with Saul, king of Israel. So that is very plain. The statement after the proclamation of the first and second angel's message is finished, indicating that there is a specific time divinely appointed by God by which such message will be proclaimed. And the consequence mentioned in this reading, in 1 SR, page 227, must be a solemn warning message to each individual, those who will continually reject the message until the message or the proclamation of such message is finished. Then we fix our own destiny unalterably, brothers and sisters. We could no longer alter the situation. Now let us read again this thing in 1 Ezra 227. And then it says, that important event is none other than the purification of God's church. So it says here, that important event, very important event, is none other than the purification of God's church and the separation of the tares from the wheat. Say Jesus, let both grow together until the harvest. The separation will mark the harvest. Note the verb until, meaning up to. This most solemn time for the one class, the tares. That is a very solemn time for the one class, to those who will not be saved. But glorious for the other, the 144,000. Thrust out the section represented by Jacob and forwards the other. Brethren, it is a very important subject by which we need to carefully study concerning that specific time when the second section represented by Jacob will pass away and the third section represented or entitled Israel will usher in. Now I would like to read this statement in 1 SR 228. It says, it was Jacob who in the night on the way to Padam Aram had the dream of the great ladder which reached from earth to heaven. And the angels of God ascended and descended upon it. This vision was a representation of the latter rain and the loud cry of the third angel's message in the time of harvest. The ladder representing Christ, the angels, the messengers, God the Father at one end, and Jacob at the other, meaning a complete connection with heaven and earth. Then it says, though the duration of this last section of provisionary time, so that is the last section of provisionary time. But what provisionary time? Though the duration of this last section of provisionary time, entitled Israel, is shorter than any of the periods before it, it is to be the most glorious time of God's church. The prophet Isaiah, looking forward to this time, says, awake, awake, put on the strength of Zion, put on the beautiful garments of Jerusalem, the holy city, for henceforth there shall no more come into thee the uncircumcised, and the unclean. Now, first of all, let us study closely that very important event, the fulfillment of the dream of Jacob. Thus, the fulfillment of the dream of Jacob fulfilled in section number 2, or is it fulfilled in section number 3? But the reading we read in 1 SR 228, it is under the description of section number 3. Now, let us read another statement in 2 SR 266. It says here, Jacob the father in type of Israel the true, dream on the way to Padam Aram. And behold, a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God ascending and descending on it. And he was afraid and said, how dreadful is this place! This is none other but the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. Genesis 28 verse 12 and 17. Jacob's dream was prophetic of a time when there will be a complete connection and constant communication with heaven and earth. The loud cry of the third angel's message, the harvest time. To that glorious church, these words apply. This is the house of God and the gate of heaven. Only by the gospel proclamation through that spiritual house can God save His people. There is to be one fold, one shepherd, one Lord, one truth to embrace, one salvation to accept, one road to travel, one gate to pass through, one train to take, and one time to depart, one heaven to enter, one people, and one holy family. There can be no other way. It is impossible to give any idea of the experience of the people of God who shall be alive upon the earth when celestial glory and a repetition of persecutions of the past are blended. They will walk in the light proceeding from the throne of God. By means of angels, there will be constant communication between heaven and earth. Testimonies for the Church, Volume 9, page 16. Now, let us connect to track number 4 and also 1SR Packet Edition. Here in 1SR Packet Edition, on page 33 and page 34, entitled Jacob's Dream. It says, on the first night of his flight from the murderous wrath of Esau, Jacob, using a stone for a pillow, lay down to rest. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God ascending and descending on it. Genesis 28 verse 12. What does the dream mean? Being another phase of the same typology, it must necessarily be a prefigurement of a noteworthy event to overtake God's people, the Jacobites. Since the ladder with one end on earth and the other in heaven symbolizes Christ, according to Patriarchs and Prophets, page 184, and since the angels walking up and down the ladder are His messengers, Great Controversy, page 512, the whole signifies that Christ shall establish through Himself a sure and constant communication between heaven and earth. And it shall come to pass in that day, I will hear, saith the Lord, I will hear the heavens, and they shall hear the earth. Hosea 2, verse 21. 1SR Packet Edition, pages 33 and page 34. Now the shepherd's rod connect Hosea 2, verse 21, indicating that the vision of Hosea in chapter 2, verse 21 is pointing to the same event, to the fulfillment of the dream, Jacob, in Genesis 28, verse 12, verse 17. So here we can prove the reality of that statement in 2SR 255, saying, one thing proves another, or explain another. 2SR page 255. So again, we find that one thing proves another. Or in track number 5, one truth dovetailing another truth. In track number 5, on page 38, saying, going on now to understand the symbolism as it thus basically defines itself, the student will see as he proceeds that each subject not only becomes clearer and clearer, one truth dovetailing with another, and all reinforcing the whole, but also that it holds a steering present truth lesson. Now let us connect the vision of Hosea, chapter 2, verse 21, being pointing to the same event, the fulfillment of the dream of Jacob. Now here in track number 4, in page 48, it says, Hosea 2, verse 21, and it shall come to pass in that day, I will hear, saith the Lord. I will hear the heavens, and they shall hear the earth. Hosea 2, verse 21. While the phrase, I will hear the heavens, shows that He, Jesus Christ, is on the earth. Or in other words, the shepherd's rod made it so plain that the fulfillment of that vision of Hosea on chapter 2, verse 21, at that time, Jesus Christ is on the earth. Now let us read again the statement in track number 4, page 48 and page 49. While the phrase, I will hear the heavens, shows that He is on the earth, the phrase, they shall hear the earth, shows that by means of the angels, there will be constant communication between heaven and earth. Testimonies for the Church, volume 9, page 16. The same passage that had been quoted by B.T. Hotep in 2SR 266 while explaining the dream of Jacob. The prophet connect the vision of Sister White in volume 9, page 16. So here, concretely builds the absolute fact that the fulfillment of the dream of Jacob is also the fulfillment of the vision of Hosea, chapter 2, verse 21, by which, at that time, when such vision is fulfilled, Jesus Christ is on the earth. Now, let us read another statement in the shepherd's rod. 1 TG, number 47, page 15. It says here, 1 TG 47, page 15. That which happened to Jacob is sure to happen to us. And how comforting to know all this ahead of time. Now, if never before, we should see that where there is a type, there is also an antitype. And that where there is no type, there is no truth. 1 TG 47, page 15. The shepherd's rod made it so plain that which happened to Jacob is sure to happen to us. And I do fully believe that the pronoun us is even more directly applied to the Jacobites, 144,000 living saints that will no longer to taste death. And how comforting it was to know ahead of time that which happened to Jacob is sure to happen to us. Now let's read 1 SR, page 61. 1 SR, page 61. It says, Jacob, 1 SR, page 61. It says, Jacob, at the advice of his parents, left home and went to Padan Aram. And on his way, the very first night, God appeared unto him in a dream. First of all, brothers and sisters, the fulfillment of this prophecy, by which such happenstance that happened to Jacob is sure to happen to us. I do fully believe that our parents, which I do recognize, Sister White being our mother and spiritual mother, and B.T. Hotep is our spiritual father. I remember the statement here in 1 SR, page 25, saying, there is no contradiction in this statement. For the angel told her that she, with the 144,000, meaning she is one with them, but not one of them. She will doubtless be with them, for she may be termed as the mother of them. 1 SR, page 25. So the spiritual mother of the 144,000 is Sister White. And for me, my spiritual father is B.T. Hotep. So the statement in 1 SR, page 61, saying, Jacob, at the advice of his parents, of course, in the fulfillment in the antitype, the advice of our parents must be through the writings of Sister White and P.T. Hotep. Both of them admonishes us, advises us that it is now the time to left home, brothers and sisters. The same with our father Abraham or grandfather. God commanded Abraham to left his father's house, his country, and his kindred. And that message given by God to Abraham is also applied to the last generation. Although that is not our subject, but let's focus to the messages in connection with the first reading, track number 3, page 49 and page 50. So let us read again the statement here in 1SR, page 61. Jacob, at the advice of his parents, so that is the advice of his parents, accordingly. And it says, left home. So it is his father and his mother that advised Jacob to left home and went to Padan Aram. And on his way, the very first night, God appeared unto him in a dream. You know, brother and sisters, the time when Jacob left home, he was 77 years old. Would you think that is just a mere happenstance? No, it is purposive design. 77 indicating 2 complete period of time. The same with the 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. If you still remember the statement in 12 symbolical, number 5 on page 14. But according to Revelation chapter 12, the church was at some time to leave the vineyard, the kingdom, and go into the Gentile world. This phase of the church history is not typified either in Seth or Isaac experience. Only in Jacob's life do we find the type for it. Only in Jacob's life do we find the type for it. Now, the antitype of the period entitled Jacob began in the year 1844, according to a reading in 1SR 227. Therefore, we need to find out what is the vineyard. Reading track number 12 on page 43, it says, 3.5 years after Christ's resurrection, the church left Palestine, vineyard. In the upper portion it says, to begin with, we see from this scripture that the woman left her vineyard, homeland, Palestine. But the church represented by Jacob, never in Palestine, ancient Palestine. Therefore, it must be pointing to the modern Palestine. Now let us read 1SR 158. The land of Canaan represents the land into which the church at this present time came into existence, namely the United States of America. The name Palestine means land of strangers. The United States is composed of strangers, people from many nations and races. Dukes of Edom refers to the same class as those mentioned in Isaiah 63 verse 1 as previously explained. The name Moab means progeny or forefathers. So the shepherd's rod made it so plain, brothers and sisters, that the modern Palestine is the United States of America. Therefore, brothers and sisters, the picture tells the whole story. According to 1SR 124, it says the picture tells the story. Symbols do not lie. So let us distinctly separate the period of time when antitypical Jacob is still living in the vineyard together with his parents, and the antitypical vineyard, the modern Palestine, is the United States of America. And the shepherd's rod made it so plain that according to the Bible, in Revelation chapter 12, the church was at some time to leave the vineyard. Now, it must be pointing to the last generation of men, by which this phase of the church history is not typified either in Seth or Isaac experience. Only in Jacob's life do we find the type for it. And since we are studying when the section of Jacob is about to pass away and the third section is to usher in by which the most important event in that predicted event is at the time when Jacob left home. Why? Because he implicitly obeyed the advice of his parents. But we are talking about the antitype. That which happened to Jacob is sure to happen to us. 1 TG 47:15. Therefore, it can easily be understood, brothers and sisters, that where Jacob is lying on that very first night, that is the very place by which Jesus Christ is standing, by which at that time there is a complete connection with heaven and earth, according to the voice of inspiration. Now let us read again the statement in 1 SR page 61. The dream which he had in the night was only a vision and representation of some future event. The meaning of the dream can be only one thing. If the ladder represents Christ, the angels as messengers, God the Father at the head, and Jacob at the foot, it means a complete connection with heaven and the true Israel. What does it mean, the true Israel? Pointing to the movement recognized by Jesus Christ as his movement, the true movement. The latter rain, the loud cry of the third angel's message. See Revelation 18, verse 1. That is the very message found in the old symbolic code. Let me read to you again. It says, to symbolic code, number 10, page 4. To symbolic code, number 10, page 4. Consequently, the church from 1844 to the close of provision is divided into two sections. And the first section is the church before the loud cry and the church in the time of the loud cry. The latter of which will, by comparison, be far superior to the former in spirituality. In fact, there is no comparison between the two. Hence, those who cannot tell in which one of these stages the church now is must be in great darkness. Remember, in 1 SR 228, it says, though the duration of this last section of provisionary time entitled Israel is shorter than any of the periods before it, it is to be the most glorious time of God's church. Now think it thoroughly, brothers and sisters. This last section entitled Israel is the shortest than any of the periods before it. So we need to classify all the periods so that we could be able to compare. That the last section entitled Israel is the shortest, shorter than any of the periods before it. But it is to be the most glorious time of God's church. But glorious for the other, but most solemn time for the one class, the tares, according to 1 SR 227 and 228. And then it says, the prophet Isaiah looking forward to this time says, therefore, that message proclaimed by Isaiah the gospel prophet, according to this reading, in 1 SR 228, is pointing to the fulfillment of that dream of Jacob, to the fulfillment at that time when there will be a complete connection with heaven and earth. Now let us read track number 1. Here in track number 1, page 26, it says, this net represents the gospel work up to the time of the purification of the church. For after the church has been purified, only such as should be saved will be granted membership. Awake, awake, put on the strength of Zion, put on the beautiful garments of Jerusalem, the holy city. For henceforth there shall no more come into thee the uncircumcised and the unclean. Isaiah 52 verse 1. This rousing alarm must sound before probation closes, for it could do no good afterwards. Indeed, could be but a mockery then, neither could it apply to the time of the loud cry, for the church is not then asleep and without the beautiful garments. Only those confirms the spirit prophecy who have withstood and overcome temptation in the strength of the mighty one will be permitted to act a part in proclaiming this message when it shall have swelled into the loud cry. Review and Herald, November 19, 1908. And in that day there shall no more the Canaanite in the house of the Lord of hosts. Zechariah 14, verse 21. Track number 1, page 26, very plain, saying that this rousing alarm recorded in Isaiah the gospel prophet, Isaiah 52, verse 1 and 2, must sound before probation closes to the church. And the focal point of the message of Isaiah 52, verse 1 and 2 is announcing the people before that tremendous events will finally be realized. At the time when Jesus Christ will visit this earth, brothers and sisters, which is also closely connected to the vision of prophet Ezekiel in chapter 1. Now let us read track number 1. Track number 1 on page 5. The call of Ezekiel to the prophetic office is one of the most interesting experiences of the ancient seers. And the revelation of what he saw by the river Chebar is perhaps of greater importance to heaven and earth this time than is any other vision on sacred record, because in a remarkable way it reveals that which unites heaven with earth, even as the Dardanelles link two importances. Thus, this study of Ezekiel's vision, which brings to light earth being visited by the majesty of the universe, may be aptly termed as the Dardanelles of the Bible. What a wonderful statement, brethren. The earth being visited by the majesty of the universe. We should not be like the Jewish people, because they knew not the visitation of Jesus Christ. Worldly thoughts, worldly cares, worldly ambition absorbed them, according to the desire of ages. 235. The Jews misinterpreted and misapplied the word of God, and they knew not the time of their visitation. The years of the ministry of Christ and his apostles, the precious last years of grace to the chosen people, they spent in plotting the destruction of the Lord's messengers. Earthly ambitions absorbed them, and the offer of the spiritual kingdom came to them in vain. So today, the kingdom of this world absorbs men's thoughts, and they take no note of the rapidly fulfilling prophecies and the tokens of the swift coming kingdom of God. The desire of ages, page 235. So, hoping that we will not be like the Jewish people, brothers and sisters. We should not follow their examples. And we need to absolutely understand such predicted event when Jesus Christ will visit the earth, or when the earth will be visited by the majesty of the universe. What will happen, brothers and sisters? I would like to read to you this reading in track number 1, page 40. It says, "Mark that while he dwells in the midst of his people, many nations shall be joined to the Lord in that day, and that he will be unto them a wall of fire round about." Here we are graphically reassured that in that day, in the day that the Lord takes the reins in his own hands and comes to dwell in the midst of the city, his presence, his marvelous chariot, shall be a protection round about his people. Thus it's seen that the Lord has come to purify his people by putting away the wicked from among them, take charge of his clean flock, and with them finish his work. In this we see that the church has come to her crisis. She that travaileth must give birth, and as soon as Zion travailed, she brought forth her children. Now I would like to read first, brothers and sisters, I would like to read that statement in 1 TG, number 49, page 8. It says, "Now who could the children be?" 1 TG, 49, page 8. "Now who could the children be? To be children of Zion, they must someday stand on Zion. They are therefore none other than the first fruits, of whom the Revelator says, And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his father's name written in their foreheads." So who are they, the children of Zion? They are the 144,000 living saints. Now, I would like to connect also the statement in track number 4, pages 14 and page 15. I would like to read the statement. And the quotation is Hosea 2 verse 18 to verse 21. Although our particular object in view is verse 21. These verses describe the latter-day state of the once fallen wife, the church, as one of unadulterated purity and absolute safety. But as she is at the present time still in her Laodicean condition, wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked, still impure and still in danger, it is evident that as Hosea's vision extends over the entire length of the Jewish church, is also extend over the entire length of the Christian church. From the crucifixion to her fast approaching liberation from bondage, when the Lord is to hear the heavens and the heavens are to hear the earth. We already read in track number 4, page 48, that the fulfillment of that vision indicates that Jesus Christ is on the earth. Track number 4 on page 48. In 2TG number 6 on page 24, in saying that the Lord will hear the heavens and the heavens the earth, 2TG number 6, page 24. In saying that the Lord will hear the heavens and the heavens the earth, inspiration actually says that when these things take place on earth, the Lord is to be in the midst of His people, that He is to speak from earth, and His subjects in heaven shall hear Him. What is that specific thing that Jesus Christ will speak while Jesus Christ is on the earth? And His subjects, of course, that is all the angels, is to hear Jesus Christ. But the most important part is that the very place by which Jesus Christ is standing, He is in the midst of His people. By which the statement in 1SR page 61, they are the true Israel. In this study, brethren, it is useless to cry out throughout the whole world, saying that we are God's true movement, while in reality, Jesus Christ do not recognize such move as His movement. So the very important thing is that it's not according to our testimony, according to our acclamation that we are the true people of God. No, it's not. The most important that it is Jesus Christ Himself that do recognizes us as His movement. To repeat again, brothers and sisters, the voice of inspiration are plainly telling us that predicted event by which there is a complete connection with heaven and earth is the fulfillment of the dream of Jacob, by which such dream of Jacob occurred in a time when Jacob is no longer in the homeland, when Jacob is no longer in his father's house. After Jacob implicitly obeyed the advice of his parents to left home, all that which happened to Jacob is sure to happen to us. And to whom? Only to the Jacobites. Who are they, the Jacobites? Those who implicitly obeyed the advice of their parents, Sister White and B.T. Hotep, that according to their inspired records, at the time when this section number 2, entitled Jacob, is about to pass away, and then usher in the next, there must be an important event that is to take place. And the very first important event is that we need to understand that the true Israel, the true movement, the divinely called movement, recognizes by Jesus Christ as He is, must be the movement that implicitly obeyed the advice of our parents. They will no longer in the homeland. What is the homeland? Track number 12, page 43, Palestine. But it is pointing to the antitypical Jacob by which such period commenced in 1844, by which both our parents, Sister White and B.T. Hotep, they were living in the vineyard, the homeland, which is the modern Palestine, United States of America. So in this prophecy, we can easily discern that the final movement, brothers and sisters, that God raised up cannot be found in the homeland, cannot be found in the vineyard, cannot be found in modern Palestine, which is the United States of America. I would like to read in one symbolic code number 7, page 9. It says, although I will be reading only beginning from page 8. One symbolic code number 7, page 8. To begin with, there is nothing in the word live that connotes finality and permanence of condition or action. One symbolic code number 7, page 8 and page 9. To begin with, there is nothing in the word live that connotes finality and permanence of condition or action. To live once does not preclude the possibility of having left on previous occasions and then return. Hence, on the logic of language alone, reading the last paragraph in one symbolic code number 7, page 8. Hence, on the logic of language alone, the mere fact that Sister White saw that Jesus would not leave the most holy place until that every case was decided does not argue that he could therefore never have left the most holy place before, and that he cannot leave it to execute Ezekiel 9 on the church. Now, let us focus to that statement that Jesus Christ lived the most holy place to execute Ezekiel chapter 9 on the church. Now, let us read track number 3 on page 46. Track number 3 is says here, in graphic demonstration that he will come to earth with all his angels to execute judgment upon the living. Now remember, we already read in one symbolic code number 7, page 8 and page 9. B.T. Hotep is emphasizing that Jesus Christ will leave the heavenly sanctuary to execute Ezekiel 9 on the church. And that is the work of antitypical Elijah, right? In track number 8 on page 61, it says, therefore, the work of Elijah particularly typifies the day of slaughter in the church. Or in other words, the specific work of the message of antitypical Elijah the Tishbite is to inform all the 144,000 living saints concerning the day of slaughter. The same with the statement in track number 1, pages 29 and 30, saying, as the words which Ezekiel was to speak to his people were found in the book which he ate, the book can be none other than the Bible, from which comes the message culminating in joy, mourning, and woe. And then it says, and drew a roll of a book was therein, and he spread it before me. And it was written within and without. And there was written therein lamentations and mourning and woe. Ezekiel chapter 2, verse 9 and verse 10. Thy right in besiegeing the slaughter in Ezekiel 9. And the was pronounced in the master's parables, the Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of, and shall cut him asunder, and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then said the king to the servants, bind him hand and foot, and take him away, and cast him into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Matthew 24, verse 50, 51. Matthew 22, verse 13. We know that this is only a parable. That the command saying, bind him hand and foot, meaning they could no longer alter the situation, brothers and sisters, and they could see nothing but darkness. Now let us go back to the statement. In track number 3, page 46. In graphic demonstration that he will come to earth with all his angels to execute judgment upon the living. The voice of inspiration says, to execute judgment upon the living. That is the focal point of the visitation of Jesus Christ to this earth. The Lord revealed himself prophetically to Ezekiel as being brought enthroned to earth by 4 living creatures just before the slaughter of the hypocrites in the church takes place. Just before the slaughter of the hypocrites in the church takes place. Ponder deeply. Track number 3, page 46. So the fulfillment of this event, of Christ's visitation on the earth, that is just before the slaughter of the hypocrites in the church takes place. The hypocrites represents the seven heads, or in other words, the hypocrites must be the leadership. Here in 2SR, let me read to you the statement given by the shepherd's rod, 2SR 101, only the last portion, saying, "The Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him." It is in connection in track number 1, page 29 and 30. It says, "Thy right in besieging the slaughter," in Ezekiel 9, by which the visitation of Jesus Christ will be at the time just before the slaughter of the hypocrites in the church. Track number 3, page 46. Although the statement in track number 3, page 46, does not say for how long from the time Jesus Christ visits the earth to the time when the slaughtering took place. It did not flatly say the period of time, but only saying that such visitation of Jesus Christ, as described in the vision of prophet Ezekiel, takes place just before the slaughter of the hypocrites in the church. And the hypocrites in the church represent the leadership, the seven heads. Now let us read 2SR 101. "The Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him," or in an hour that he is not aware of. Meaning, they did not know of Christ's visitation. "And shall cut him asunder, and appoint him his portions with the hypocrites, with the heads of the beast. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Matthew 24, verse 45 to verse 51. So the hypocrites represent the seven heads of the leopard-like beast, which is representing the leadership. Now here is a statement that I would like to read to you, given by the shepherd's rod. Here in 2SR, it says here, 2SR on page 117, 2SR page 117, Revelation 17 verse 9. "And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The seven heads are seven mountains, on which the woman sitteth. All the heads being present on the beast, and the woman sitting on them, proves that all seven mountains must be in existence at the same time. They cannot be consecutive, for the woman sits on them all, which denotes one great union of the heads by the medium of the woman. They are called mountains, as God's denomination is called mountain in Isaiah 2 verse 2 and Micah 4 verse 1. The mountain singular is God's denomination, but the mountains plural by both Isaiah and Micah have reference to the same denominations represented by the heads on the beast. Thus the seven heads are seven mountains. Now, who are they? The mountains in Micah chapter 4. So the statement have reference to the same denominations by the heads on the beast. But Micah chapter 4 must be only pointing to the seven heads of the leopard-like beast. Now, let us read first 1SR. 173 in 1SR, it is section number 7, entitled Section number 7. And I think section number 7, brothers and sisters, number 7 is the last section, because number 7 is a complete number. So it must be the last section, as there are only 7 sections. Of course, there are 3 sections in the Old Testament, 3 sections on the New Testament. Then the remaining section, the last section, is section number 7. It is entitled under Melchizedek. But let us read the statement. What is the meaning of the 4th chapter of Micah? 1SR 173. It says, section number 7. What is the meaning of the 4th chapter of Micah? But in the last days it shall come to pass that the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established in the top of the mountains, and it shall be exalted above the hills, and people shall flow unto it. Micah 4 verse 1. The scripture is unmistakably clear that it was intended for the last days, for it reads, but in the last days it shall come to pass. It is also positive that this scripture would be fulfilled, for it says, it shall come to pass. So there are two high points in our reading. Micah 4 verse 1. First, the fulfillment of such vision must be in the last days. And second, the living assurance that such prophecy must be fulfilled. For it says, it shall come to pass. Or in other words, the same with the statement saying, I, the Lord, have spoken it, I will do it. Ezekiel 36 on verse 36. I, the Lord, have spoken it, and I will do it, for my words shall not return unto me void. Isaiah 55, verse 10 and 11. And then it says in 1SR 173, it is an accepted fact that nearly all Bible students agree that the mountain spoken of in this chapter is a symbol of God's church denomination, of which the temple built on Mount Moriah was a type. So that is very plain. The temple that was built on Mount Moriah was a type. Now ponder deeply, brothers and sisters. What does it mean by Mount Moriah? Now let us read first track number 8. Pages 5 and page 6. The seven lamps, verse 5, being part of the sanctuary fixtures, gives conclusive evidence that the heavenly throne scene occurs in the sanctuary, whereas the subsequent Zion scene takes place upon Mount Zion, the king's earthly palace grounds, not upon Mount Moriah, the sanctuary grounds, where it would necessarily have to take place, where it to denote that the event occurs in the sanctuary. These scenes, therefore, are of two different events in two different locations. The sitting of the throne in heaven and the standing of the redeemed with the Lamb on earth, while the activities embraced in the throne scene are still in progress. Track number 8, page 5 and 6. What is Mount Moriah? Sanctuary grounds. It points out to the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. So that predicted event in Micah chapter 4, verse 1, it must be pointing to God's church denomination, by which the type is the temple that was built in Mount Moriah. And Mount Moriah indicates sanctuary grounds, pointing to the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. Therefore, it can easily be understood that such church, my dear brothers and sisters, they have a complete understanding concerning the entire proceedings from the heavenly sanctuary, as represented the church in Mount Moriah, the sanctuary grounds, the very place by which Abraham offered his son Isaac. Now let us go back again to our main sub concerning the visitation of Jesus Christ, by which, according to the shepherd's rod in track number 3, page 46, that visitation is to execute judgment in the church. And such visitation, according to track number 3, page 46, brothers and sisters, that in such visitation takes place just before the slaughter of the hypocrites in the church. So that is very plain. Now I would like to read to you answerer number 5. So let's read the statement given by the shepherd's rod. Answerer number 5, page 56. How to prove that the slaughter is literal? Question number 134. How can I prove to a Seventh-day Adventist that the slaughter of Ezekiel 9 is literal? But at this time, I could also use the question, how to prove that the slaughter is figurative? And I would like to add in the question number 134, how can I prove to a Davidian that the slaughter of Ezekiel 9 is figurative? There is no spiritual slaughtering, but there is a figurative slaughtering, by which I do fully believe that there are many Davidian, if not all, they were in total darkness concerning the figurative slaughtering. So, how can I prove that the slaughtering is figurative? And to whom? To the Davidian. But to prove that the slaughtering is literal, according to the reading, it is directed to the Seventh-day Adventist brethren. So I would like to read first that statement in answerer, is it number 4? Saying that whether it is literal or figurative, it brings separation. And is it answerer number 3 or number 4? Bawis BT Hotep says, whether it is literal or figurative, it causes separation. Answerer number 2, page 43. Let us read first. Answerer number 2, page 43. It says, Ezekiel 9, whether literal or figurative, affects a separation between the good and the bad. Now let us go first to the literal slaughtering. Answerer number 5, page 56. How to prove that the slaughter is literal? How can I prove to a Seventh-day Adventist that the slaughter of Ezekiel 9 is literal? Answer. First, call his attention to the fact that the Lord himself was at the threshold of the earthly house while the slaughter took place therein. Carefully study track number 1, the Dardanelles of the Bible, treating of the event as seen by the prophet, and get this point along with kindred ones well fixed in the mind. Answerer number 5, page 56 can be easily understood that when such slaughtering mentioned in the Bible, mentioned in the spurred prophecy, at that time, Jesus Christ is on the earth, that slaughtering is literal. But when such slaughtering mentioned, more particularly by the Shepherd's Rod publications, brothers and sisters, Jesus Christ at that time is still on the heavenly sanctuary. That slaughtering mentioned must be figurative, not literal. I would like to quote this reading in 12 Symbolic Code number 3, page 18. Yes, read the statement. 12 Symbolic Code number 3, page 18. It says, the only judging which the sanctuary in heaven does in regard to this is to give the right for one class of the dead to arise either in the first resurrection or in the second resurrection, and to give right for one class of the living to stand on Mount Zion with the Lamb for translation, and for the other to die at the slaughter weapons of the angels and to arise in the second resurrection. This is a figurative slaughtering. The statement saying to give right for the other class to die at the slaughter weapons. That statement, to give right for the other class to die at the slaughter weapons, indicating that at that time they did not yet been slaughtered. The slaying does not yet took place, but they were already destined for slaughtering. They were already destined to be slaughtered. Figuratively, they were already subject to be slaughtered by that literal slaughtering. The same with that statement, brothers and sisters, in 12 Symbolic Code number 2, page 9. 12 Symbolic Code number 2, page 9, concerning Genesis 4, verse 15. And the Lord said unto him, therefore whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. So let us distinctly separate the mark that is placed upon the wicked and the mark that is placed upon the righteous. Cain represents the wicked, and that mark is a mark that he is destined for slaughtering. I remember this reading, brethren, in Bible commentary. It says here, Bible commentary 1 BC 1087. Any man, be he minister or layman, who seeks to compel or control the reason of any other man, becomes an agent of Satan to do his work, and in the sight of the heavenly universe, he bears the mark of Cain. There are many really deviant brothers and sisters. In our own experience, they are trying to control the conscience of other people by saying, do not listen to that. And if those people will listen, they become angry. That spirit never originates from God, because God is a God of freedom, God of liberty. The voice of inspiration says in Desire of Ages that anything by which principles are involved, it says Desire of Ages 550, in matters of conscience, the soul must be left untrammeled. No one is to control another's mind, to judge for another, or to prescribe his duty. God gives to every soul freedom to think and to follow his own conviction. Every one of us shall give account of himself to God. No one has a right to merge his own individuality in that of another. In all matters where principle is involved, let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind. Desire of Ages, page 550. And that is the true character of the true Davidian, as showed by the character of B.T. Hotep. It says here, and one symbolic code number 4, page 1, one symbolic code number 4, page 1. This is the statement given by B.T. Hotep. Do not wave into the shepherd's rad's message your own interpretations of the Bible, Sister White writings, nor any of your constructions on anything that is written therein before first submitting your points to this office. If your claim on a subject which you may hold as being correct is found so and accepted as of value by this office, after a careful examination, we can have it published and distributed throughout our ranks, if that is your desire. But if we see no light in your verbal presentation or document of your claims, we shall so inform you as quickly as possible. Then, if you do not feel clear to yield to our judgment, be you pleased to know that we shall not attempt to block your way of teaching the same, nor oppose those who wish to read or listen to your discourses. Let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind, is our position. Can you imagine the character of the professed Davidian today? Look at B.T. Hotep says, that to that brother by which B.T. Hotep declared that we see no light in your verbal presentation or documents. But even though that we see no light of it, we will never attempt to block your way. And we will never attempt to warn people not to listen to your discourses. You have an absolute freedom. And B.T. Hotep says, it says that we will never oppose those who wish to read or to listen to your discourses. Let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind, is our position. Is that the character of the Davidian today? You can see in internet. Do not listen to the Laymans movement. They were wicked, false prophet. Everything to ruin the reputation of other people they did. Is that the character of the true Davidian? What a blasphemy. What is the blasphemy? Saying that they are Davidian, but in reality, they were not. Because their characters resemble that of Satan, according to the great controversy, 519. The slanderer of the brethren, the accuser of the brethren. The true character of a real Davidian, brothers and sisters, will never ruin the reputation of other people and will never warn people not to listen, brothers and sisters, because every individual has their own right whether to listen or not. That is their own individual rights given by God to each of us. So, brethren, we will continue this subject and gradually we will explain to you the definite time of Christ's visitation as well as the day of slaughter. That visitation of Jesus Christ takes place just before the slaughter of the hypocrites in the church takes place. Track number 3, page 46. But we will explain to you the specific, definite time, Christ's visitation. May the good Lord bless you and have a beautiful, wonderful evening.